Piatra-Neamtz is a city set in the middle of the Moldavian Carpathian Mountains, in the valley of Bistrița River, at the base of the mountains Chachlo. It was always considered a special city because of where it was situated and because of its climate. Some called it the Pearl of Moldavia. People from Bucharest and from other parts of the country would come here to spend their summer vacations. Down the Bistrița River, rafts made of fir tree trunks tied together were floated towards wood processing factories in Piatra down the river. Some rafts were floated even further, down the Siret River, all the way to the Danube. Here is the Caula, a raft used to ferry people over Bistrița to somewhere called Over the Valley, a place to hold picnics for lovers and promenades. Before the war, a stone bridge was built over Bistrița, so the romantic Caula had disappeared. I found a few old postcards, greetings from Piatra-Neamtz, with images of the city during the 20s and the 30s of the 20th century. This is also the way I remember it, complete with horse-driven carriages for hire, the taxicab equivalent of the time, and carts rented to move merchandise, 1 or 2 horsepower transportations. This is how it looked when the streets Piatra-Neamtz and Cuza Voda Street, also named the Big Street or Main Street, where only Jews lived. Here on the Big Street are gathered the Jews in the ghetto. This is the National Theater at Piatra-Neamtz. Built before the war, across the square, there was the famous public garden, where every Sunday they played a fanfare of the 15th Dorobants Regiment, a repertoire of waltzes and marches. The city is several hundred years old, since the 14th century or perhaps earlier. At first, there was the citadel of Piatra-Neamtz, built on a fort established by the Teutons for the defense of the civilized Europe against the invasion of the barbarian hordes. One of the main builders of the citadel was Stephen the Great, who ruled Moldava between 1456 and 1504 AD. He built in the middle of the citadel the famous tower of Stephen the Great. On the commemorative plaque, there is an inscription of the sovereign's decree. I, Stephen Voivod, built this belfry in 1499. Next to it stands the cathedral, also built in the 15th century. On the place where there used to be the citadel's buildings, they later built the Lyceum, or secondary school, Piatra-Neamtz, where I was also a pupil until 1941, when together with all the other Jewish pupils, I was expelled for racist reasons. The archaeologists dug under the high school's building and found the citadel's buildings. The work had to be stopped, though, because of the risk that the buildings might collapse. Behind the school, there is still standing a part of the citadel wall. Next to the wall, the first synagogue in the city of Piatra-Neamtz, built in the 15th century during the reign of Stephen the Great. The Jews were given permission to build a house of prayer made of wood outside the city wall. In Descriptio Moldavia, the book written by the Prince Dmitri Cantemir in 1716, he notes that the Jews may build synagogues anywhere they want, but only made of wood. They do not have permission to use stone. Meanwhile, the synagogue burnt down, and during the reign of George Alexander Gika, the Jewish community asked for permission to build another synagogue made of stone, but again, they were not permitted to do so. They were allowed to build a synagogue, but also only of wood, on the same place, on the foundation of the old synagogue. It was rebuilt in the 18th century and is still standing today. It is one of the oldest wooden synagogues in Europe. The synagogue is more than half sunk into the soil because of the torrents of rain and gravel coming down the mountain Kozla during the rainy season. The upper windows are now at street level. This is the table on which the Torah is read. It stands on a podium which is called the Bima. The Jews, who are called to read the Torah, walk the steps to this podium. The call to the Torah in Hebrew is called Aliyah, which means to ascend. That is why the place is elevated. Bima in this synagogue in itself represents a piece of art, with all its details sculpted in wood and beautifully colored. Now the synagogue is called Baal Shem Tov because, legend has it, the great tzaddik, Israel Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Hasidism, stayed a few days at this synagogue 200 years ago on his way to Eretz Israel. His holy hands touched the banister of this bima. Another old legend regarding the synagogue says that in the 16th century, King Petru Raresh, while running from the Turks and looking for refuge, was hidden by the Jews in the old synagogue. The wooden ceiling of this synagogue is bare, where normally we would find paintings of the sky, the sun, and the moon. Another piece of art is the locker, where the holy scrolls of Torah are kept, the Aron Kodesh, a sculpture in wood of great value. The columns have floral motifs, grapevines, birds and animals,